Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. My name is Cassandra, and I would like to address you today in regards to my offering to America and the world to try to do things a little bit differently. Right now, I'm not okay with the outcomes that America is experiencing. I'm disappointed and I feel pity for a great many people that are in positions of authority and decision making and power and influence, for the fact that nobody seems interested at all in trying to get on the same page about anything. And I understand, there's a lot of bad things that are happening all around, and many people are feeling helpless and being led to a position, a sense, at the very least, a sense of desperation, and that leads people to do things that are not always their best version. And I think that this is something that's, obviously been coming a long time coming. America has been just on the really just visionless and pointless path for a really long time, and it's always been just this fighting between sides and ideologies and methods that people want to use to try to grab a hold of power and pull things or push things in a certain direction. And everybody's out to try to, protect the thing that they base their reputation on, or the thing that they base their livelihoods on, or the thing that they base, their comforts in life, the way of life that they've established. They want to protect that because they don't want to go through change. And many people work really hard to get themselves in a position of what they sense is this is the life that I want to live. And as long as everything goes according to this, it fits what I need it to be in order for me to do the things that I want and accomplish the things that I want. And everybody experiences that. It's a part of the human element. It's natural. Where the problem comes in is that we have conflicting interests. Not everybody agrees on, what should be the trajectory that we're taken as a people, as a culture, as a society, as a nation, as a species, as a planet. And so there's many different people that are trying to come up with concepts and ideas that, lead or push or pull or demand or force or corner, and they build up these schemes and these frameworks and they build up legitimacies and they build up capital assets and they build up coalitions and things in order to get everybody, as many people as they can, to agree. Let's do this thing in this way for these reasons. And it will result in this sort of return on investment for you, and that's why you're going to want to put your effort into it, because that's a good thing for you, because we've convinced you that it's a good thing. And even when, you go all in with it and it doesn't quite give you the results that you had hoped for, there's plenty of people there still trying to get you to champion for the cause, because it's hold out a little bit longer and you're gonna have to struggle for a little while, but it's gonna work out in the end, don't you worry. And the trouble with it is, in my belief, that if what you're doing does not feel right as you're doing, it's probably the wrong thing to do. And if there's any sense of inclination of doubt or worry or concern, or it feels like it's going against, your values that you hold dear within you, it's probably not the right thing to do. And I guess what I'm saying is we really do have a conscience, but we're often led to not listen to that conscience because of other things that we're told are more important than that. Like, it's not, don't worry about the fact that you feel bad, that bad things are happening to good people, or, you don't know those people, and at least it's not happening to you. And that's really the wrong way that we are being led in society. Like, we're supposed to be about finding those things that work for everyone's best interest. The biggest problem that we have right now is we don't have a governing system that is trustworthy. And we've never really had anything like that. I really believe that America is the closest thing to a trustworthy system because we're based off of our Declaration of Independence that said, listen, we understand what it's like to be oppressed and for things to go wrong and for us to be brought to the brink of total annihilation of freedom and peace and liberty and a sense of, we are our own, that we belong to ourselves and not others. And we declared our independence from tyranny, and we said we're not going to allow that. We believe in a free world, and we want that for ourselves. We want that for our children. We want that for everybody because that's just what's just, fair, reasonable, and right. And so we broke away from tradition. We broke away from what was long-standing, and we said, we're starting new, and this is what we're going to be about. We're going to be about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We established that that's an inalienable right everybody holds. And we want to create a place of thriving for all people who believe that that is the truth, the light, and the way. To be able to come here and to firmly root themselves in that principle, that honest truth, that so long as we're here, that's what we're about. And that's what we're going to continue to be about. And then we set ourselves on a definite course of parameters of like, this is how we're going to achieve that firm, that covenant, that belief, that definite creed that we assign to ourselves and to our posterity. Like, this is a place of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. America really had this like in the back of every mind of every free and independent person who came to America ever, is this idea that America speaks to them in more than words, this ideal of go forth and freedom go with you. And so we made a constitution to give us parameters that say, we, the people of the United States, which doesn't say in there, we the citizens born in America, these sorts of things, but we the people of the United States, of this nation, of this place, we are of it, we are about it. We agreed that the Declaration is principle and truth. It says to us, it speaks to us in more than words, go forth and freedom go with you. And so we, the people of these United States, we determined we need to form that more perfect union. We need to establish what is justice, because look what happens when you don't have justice. We had to declare independence from tyranny. That's what we are forming justice and securing that and determining what is justice, because we know what it's like to live in an unjust world. We form our union, we make it more perfect, because we know that times are going to change, we're going to grow, evolve. The things that we do, the actions that we take, the external forces that, we find ourselves in, our situational context will change. Our historical context will change. Our context where we find ourselves now will change. And we have to change with that. That's why the Constitution was written to be interpreted with, again, in the back of the interpretation, the baseline context of it is that freedom, go forth and freedom go with you. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. unalienable, it's for everybody. And we're forming a more perfect union, befit the times, establishing our justice. We're ensuring domestic tranquility, which means that we have to have corrective mechanisms that we can turn to in times of crisis or conflict or controversy, or, in a case of injustice or something, that we have to be able to turn with those corrective mechanisms, and through that find a resolution to the intractability of problems. That's what governance is about. Solving for the intractability of problems, finding a way to put traction underneath it and give everybody a sense of what's just, fair, reasonable, and right, and expected for people in a civil society to do on behalf of themselves and others, in civil cohort with one another, to do the right thing so that we can resolve these things and move forward and move on. Back in alignment with, go forth, freedom go with you. And, we establish that justice, we ensure domestic tranquility, we provide for the common defense, which part of that is also knowing that we need to have our two-way rights to be able to defend ourselves and protect ourselves in case somebody else isn't going to be able to be there to do it for us. But all rights come with responsibilities, and we need to have reasonable measures to make sure that things don't get out of hand, in terms of making sure that weapons that can do mass destruction should not be in the hands of people that have no sense of self-control or no capacity for self-control, to the point where they would use that in excessive extremes, in aggression, in violence against others. We need to have parameters to help to safeguard against that potential, because that is a threat to our security and our safety. And part of providing for the common defense is a common sense approach to the fact that, some people just can't be trusted with guns. So, but that's also, providing for the common defense is our military. It's also making sure that we're not pissing off other nations, unnecessarily, or trying to take more than what we deserve, and making other people bend to our will. America's not perfect, and I don't expect other nations to be like us, but we're not in competition with other nations. We don't need to compete different political ideologies or ways of being as a nation. We just need to surpass them. America's intended to be, an ever more perfect union, a light unto the nations, to say we really have a fantastic model, that if other people would pick up on the best parts of what we have to offer, and model it in the ways that are appropriate for and be fit for them, that we might be able to come to a cohesiveness in what is democracy in the world. And then we would have a mutuality that we share with all people, this sense of this is the fraternity and brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity. This is how we all just get along, But America should be about modeling that, advancing that, and then using our capacity to perfect our union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for that common defense, promote our general welfare, make sure that what we're doing is a good model, a good example, so other people don't want to turn on us and cause harm to us, but also so we don't have internalized conflict. We're seeing a lot of that right now. I understand the reasoning for it, and I appreciate it when people go out and they protest, because it's a way of dissenting, and it's saying, I'm not okay with the way things are going, and I'm not all right with you doing that, and I want you to stop. This needs to change, and it's demanding that change, but there's so many limits to it. It just doesn't do what I think is necessary for us to get us on the right track. I really want people to switch gears and invest themselves into practical, applicable development and establishment, building out things that will help to change the way things are, change our ontology, right? The way that we live in such a way that is just, fair, reasonable, right? Based off of the terms and conditions of, well, I don't want it to be, the way that these oligarchs are taking us in this direction where the whole system is rigged into their favor and everybody else just has to deal with it. Like, I'm not okay with that. Well, then let's start building something that makes their system obsolete. They have resources and they have assets because they've pinned the system in their favor for so long that that's just the way it is. It doesn't have to continue to be that way. We have a tremendous amount of power and capacity. Just look at everybody out on the streets protesting. Use that towards something that's actually constructive, that actually does something of change. Instead of trying to turn to demand change, make the change, damn it. There's a difference, and that's where I'd like to see that energy to be able to go to. But then also at the same time, I'm really just not okay with the idea of pointing fingers at this other side and being like, fuck you, you change, you're the bad guy. There's a lot of bad actors with nefarious intent using malevolent intelligences to intentionally cause harm to people so that they can benefit from the suffering of others. And I'm not okay with those people. I'm not okay with those outcomes. And they do need to be stopped. That's violence against somebody's personhood. It's not okay. It's not reasonable. It's not just. It's not fair. And we do need to stop those. And I get righteously angry when I see that happening. But I don't want to do so in such a way where it kills the spirit of what many of those people, I think, had before they decided to turn so bad because they thought that was the only way to do this. You have to be evil. It's necessary because that's the only way to make this all work. I think they lost sight of what actually matters. And they started doing bad things in order to achieve what they thought was good. I want to set things right and bring people back into relation with one another in a civic way, a civil way, to say, like, stop doing what you're doing that's wrong. Come to the table with open minds, open hearts, open to the possibilities that maybe we can work together on something that is beneficial for everyone. And when I do listen to, a lot of the people that are, bad actors, nefarious intent, there's still an inkling in there that they're like, oh no, guys, just trust us. Let us fuck everything up for a while. Let's be evil because it's a necessary evil, and we're going to just fix the system, man, and it's going to be amazing, and everybody's going to be happy. I think they feel and believe that to some extent, and that's kind of what's driving them, but there's no sense of, like, they don't feel like they have to check in with anybody else as to whether that's even what they would want. And that's the problem. In the political left, in the political right, neither side is asking one another, like, what do you want? What would be reasonable? And so I think that what would help us to be able to find out what is reasonable between all parties involved is to come into a situation with one another where we start building something intentionally together. Where you say, this doesn't have to be the way it is forever, but let's start with a basic idea that everybody can foster together. And everybody can bring their insights and bring their suggestions, and we can, out in the open, mold and shape it together and make adjustments and find best practices and say, well, what if we did this in this way? And then we can invite all brilliant minds to come and be involved in it. And then have relevant stakeholders at the table say, you know what? I understand why you want to do it that way. But we can't necessarily do it that way because if we do it that way, it may cause harm to me in these ways. So is there an opportunity somewhere in there that we can do things a little bit different? Is there a possibility that we might be able to do something similar that makes it so that it doesn't directly harm anybody, doesn't have these negative consequences to it? And we can find those things if we take the time and we're reasonable about it and we come to the table about it. but not in a way where it's like, fuck you, you know. I literally don't care about the political left or the political right. I don't care about the Democratic Party. I don't care about the Republican Party. I care about the responsible party. And that's just what I want everybody to do, is just be responsible for, you know, the things that matter in your life. You know, I hear people from all sides saying, we love America. But America in their head is not always the same thing. And so let's get on the same page about what America stands for. And let's start small and think big, you know? First of all, how about the idea of go forth and freedom go with you, right? That's a great place to start. That's what American identity stands for? Okay, that's what we're going to be about? All right. Well, what does that mean? Well, you know, it's everybody's born and endowed by their creator, whatever creator they believe in, but there is a creator. Something created you from nothing, and you're here. And whatever that creator is, whatever you identify with, that helps you to understand how you came from unbeing to being, whatever that is, that creator endowed you and everyone else with inalienable rights. They cannot be used against you, and they cannot be taken away from you. You have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what freedom is. And you should go forth in your life in pursuit of happiness, living your life with liberty. And freedom goes with you because you have freedom to do these things, but then you understand. Well, liberty means that there also has to be responsibility that says, like, there's only so far that you can take a thing before it gets out of hand. And you have to understand that sometimes there's going to be things that you want to do that you can't do because it's not the right thing to do. And you have to grow a conscience about that. And you grow that conscience by being in relation with other people, saying, like, you know, my family probably can't do that because it's not going to be right for them. You know, my life partner, I probably can't do that because it's not going to be right for them. You know, my neighbor, my fellow community member, just my fellow citizen, my fellow world citizen, probably shouldn't do that because it's probably not the right thing. It's going to harm them in some way. Is there any way to mitigate that? You know, and then if you're in a situation where it's like, listen, I got to do this thing because this is the thing that I feel that I have to do. And, you know, I believe it has so much potential to do these wonderful things if we could just get past, you know, this little bump in the road that we have to go through. We have to go through the breakdown to get to the breakthrough. You know, there has to be something reasonable and convincing that says that it's worth it to go through that. And then something to help as much as you can to mitigate the risks, and be there with necessary supports for the people who are going to be impacted negatively by it. Because you can't just screw people over and then leave them to the side of the road, you know, discard them like they don't matter, or turn a blind eye to like it, you know, I don't see it, so it must not be happening, but it is. And we have to be conscious and considerate of that because of the fact that that's what we want for ourselves. That's what we want for other people. Ultimately, the golden rule, right? It's do unto others, and not just in a sense of like, be kind so other people can be kind, but like, I would never wish that upon anybody else. If there is a reasonable way to protect the interest of all parties involved, you know, secure a situation for everyone, that's what we should be looking for. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time to work out, but it doesn't take a whole bunch of time, especially when you have more minds working on the same thing and you get like a general idea, like this is what we're trying to figure out together, guys. And you have the relevant stakeholders based off of the, you know, closest proximity of relevance, and then going out and out and out, and to a certain degree where you're like, you know what, in some roundabout whatever way, yeah, this might offend a person a little bit if we do things in this way, but, you know, we can't accommodate everybody's sensibilities. Some people are going to be offended. Some people are going to be pissed off. But if the worst out of a situation is somebody has to go through a little bit of discomfort for a while to ultimately achieve something where everybody gets to live in a much better situation that everybody can thrive on, it's worth it, right? Because those people can adjust their sensibilities to the new situation, be like, yeah, well, you know what? I sure was comfortable with the status quo. My life really was going great during that thing. And man, that system broke down and it was uncomfortable and it was dissatisfying for a while and I was pissed off and it made me mad or sad or angry or whatever. But I eventually got over it because I had supports along the way saying, I know it's tough, but man, we're going to make it through this. And then on the other side, I'm living in a different life experience and wow, this is so much better. I'm glad I was willing to let go of that so that I can be free to embrace something that's new and better. That's like the biggest problem that we have is so many people are hard pressed to hold on to things as they are so that they don't have to change. But the thing is like change is supposed to be this wonderful, beautiful thing. We should be able to be malleable, adaptable, mobile, efficient, sufficient in all the ways that are necessary and be able to shift with the times as need be. Our stagnancy and our immobility, these things are holding us down and preventing us from achieving the things that are necessary for us to thrive. So holding on to things as they were, that's part of the pain and the struggle. But we also need to do so in such a way that respects life and the dignity of people. That's why we have the concept of human rights, which our Constitution gave us our Bill of Rights to say, like, these are basic parameters, guys, that we've determined these things will help us to maintain, the basic tenets that the Constitution, the preamble to the Constitution says. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We ordained the Constitution and we set in the Bill of Rights to say this is how we're going to do this, how we're going to live in accordance. And this is, all the corrective mechanisms that we know are necessary that we've put in place to say when we find an intractability of a situation, our government mechanisms kick in and we start correcting for those things. And when corruption comes in, because power tends to corrupt, we have ways to shift the power to the least concentrated place, wherever that corruption is compiling concentrated power, shift away from that into a decision maker that isn't corrupt, that can then make decisions on how to fix for the corruption so that it can go away, be solved for, and then we can get back into business as usual, which is just finding an operation of how to provide the means for a safe space, a situation that we can welcome all people into, that they can thrive on. And this is how I see and I interpret the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence is there to tell us this is everything that we understand, that when things go wrong, we refuse. This is what we will not stand for, and their Constitution is, this is what we stand for. This is how we take a stand on things. This is how we're going to hold ourselves upright and say that we are legitimate, that we are a nation that is sovereign. This is how we distinguish ourselves. And then the problem is that we don't really have a true American identity, and somewhere along the way people got lost and confused and are trying to say that our identity is based off of our American flag. Sure, that's symbolic of a sense of patriotism, but it's what it means behind that. Like, the idea of it is that it represents to us the safe space that we can thrive on. It represents the fact that our nation is a place worth defending. And we take a pledge of allegiance to that flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. We are one nation under a God indivisible, nothing can separate us, and there is nothing that is above us as a nation but an almighty creator. and we make sure there's liberty and there's justice for all. And justice needs to look the same no matter who you are, no matter what class, rank, status, where you were born, what's your age, what color of skin you have, what your orientation is, the identities that you conform to, as long as you're living in that sense of, go forth and freedom go with you. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, living by the tenets of the Constitution, we the people want all these things, and we're abiding by our Bill of Rights, and we're also recognizing, the other well-established institutions that came out over the years as we started to grow as a civilization, become more globalized and largely connected with one another. We came up with, the UN's Declaration of Human Rights, just in general, like these are saying, like, we need to make sure this is the way it is for all people. Because when we know that other people are safe and reasonable, that actually makes us more secure. The more safe and stable and reasonable and less violence there is in the world, the safer the world becomes for us. So that's why we go out and we help to defend democracy. Is because we know that the whole idea of democracy is to be able to find a way where you can live in accordance in civil society, where tyranny will not be able to take a foothold and then suppress people and discard people, and where violence and corruption proliferates and justice cannot prevail. Like, our whole idea is to make it so that justice prevails. Why? Because every nation is founded off of the concept of law. And so I think that America's problem right now is obviously a lot of bad actors with nefarious intent exploiting the situation and taking advantage of the fact that things are in disarray because people in leadership, first of all, don't know what they're doing. They don't know where they're going. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And they're fly by the seat of the pants, and it's all just like, pageantry. It's literally bread and circus. And it's really sad and unfortunate. And things are being taken down and dismantled, things that are like life supports for people. And instead of doing it in a conscious, considerate, legitimate way, with care and concern of like, okay, guys, we're going to go through this really difficult thing together. We're going to out-process these things that are not working out for us. And we're going to build in an auxiliary system that brings support so that you're not going to be left behind with nothing. Don't worry. We're going to shift you over to this better system that's going to help to, support you in the meantime while we break this other system down. And then we work together to build up a new system that works for everybody. That's what we should be doing, but that's not what's happening. There's a lot of just confusion and mayhem, and they're trying to run America like a business, but the fact of the matter is that there's nowhere in our nation that says that there's anything to do with business conducting. The closest thing to it is the idea of contracts and legalities and taxation, and appropriation, things like that. But that's not really a business, because the difference is that we're not doing this for profit. A nation is not in existence to profit. We're here to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. We're trying to achieve outcomes together. And so approaching it like a business is a terrible idea, especially because businesses fail all the time, because they lose sight of their purpose. Markets become destabilized because of, factors out of their control, or some new competitor comes in and, or people lose interest in it, whatever. Like, what is endearing is enduring. And commercialism is not an endearing thing. What's endearing is the sense of like freedom, go forth, freedom go with you. I get to choose who I want to be, and I get to live this life of experiences and encounters with my fellow human beings. And it's supposed to be, like pursuit of happiness. I get to live my life. Like, these are the things that are important to us. That's why people are on the streets, because they want to fight for their sense of, we had these supports set in place so people could experience more of the good life. But then you have people that are breaking that down, and that's why we're having such a problem. And I just want to fix that. I just want to change that. I want bad actors with nefarious intent to be stopped. I want people who are in desperate situations to chill the fuck out. I want everybody to come together and say, we really believe this nation has the potential to do extraordinary things. And it is important for everybody's benefit and well-being that we find a way to make everything work to the best interest of all parties involved. So let's be decisive about it and determine what that's going to be about. In my personal opinion, the one small thing, go forth, freedom go with you. What else can we identify with after that? Well, the next thing I believe would be to establish a archetype and embed it in our American identity. That's something that all people can relate to and get a sense and get a feeling for and choose to be about in their own way. And I believe that that's welfaring stewardship. What welfaring stewardship is, in the most basic and sensible way, is that I want America to work for 100% of the people here in the shortest time possible. And I want to do so without ecological offense. And I don't want it to disadvantage anyone. And I want to make sure that it's inclusive so that nobody gets left behind. And I want to do that in such a way because what we're working towards is securing the good life for all people. And I believe we can do that if we say that we're about provisioning, accommodating, supporting, and stewarding the criterion echelon of society, which is the baseline fundamental standard of this is the American way. This is the American identity. When you come to America, guess what? It is like going to heaven. People once thought that about America. That's why so many immigrants came here and entrusted their lives and their sacred honor to establish this place. And we can really make that a reality. Make this like going to heaven. We can make America like paradise. We have so much potential. So much potential. And if we just tap into the untapped potential of human ingenuity, our most abundant resource that we have here in America, we can make this an incredibly beautiful, extraordinary place where people can live, have their life, live in liberty, pursue their happiness without infighting with one another all the time. And making sure that this criterion echelon of society, which is basically just everybody who has agreed, that's what we're going to be about. We're going to make sure that everybody is fed, safe, clothed, housed, has clean water, clean sanitation. In the ideal model framework, we are living in accordance with planetary boundaries, and we are aligning our outcomes with the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we're saying to ourselves, we know that as long as we are referencing our Declaration of Independence, we're following, and attempting to accomplish the intended principles, the tenets within the preamble to the Constitution. And we're abiding by the structural governance the Constitution gave us to help us determine and establish that justice. And we're aligning with, our basic human rights, our, Bill of Rights and our civil rights, making sure all these things are in accordance, then we have a really good framework to govern. And then the whole idea should be to bring decision-making down to the lowest concentration of power to the individual. We need to be a nation of individuals, self-sufficient, self-sustaining, self-determined, self-reliant, free and independent people in a unity of interdependence with one another so that we can continue to be an independent nation, a nation of independence. and choosing for ourselves, like, to be in alignment with that. It's like, my independence is dependent on your independence, so we have to secure that for everybody in mutualities. It needs to be mutually beneficial, mutually respectful, mutual securities need to be there. We need to have a sense of what's mutually safe for everyone. Establish those sorts of things, and that helps us to conform the ideals of what type of laws we need. And then we need to go in through the books, and we need to delete the useless and antiquated notions of laws that no longer serve us, sunset them out, and then bring rise to those which we need that are befit the times, but still hold true to the long-standing, enduring, immutable truths that are upheld within our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. I believe this is possible by adding a fourth branch of government, a civics branch of government, where it literally makes every citizen in America have a seat at the table in government. They are empowered to have governance, to do decision making, to affect change for themselves and others around them. So there actually is a mechanism for us to be able to move decision making for governance to the smallest concentration of power. And if they can't do it themselves, and the situation is in an intractable situation, then it goes up to the next line, of governance, and, to local and state, and then federal. Federal is the very last thing that we deal with. Like, federal should be doing a lot of nothing until they're called upon to serve. The power has to ultimately rest with the individuals. I want America to be more like a co-op, like a cooperative, where everybody has skin in the game, everybody has a seat at the table, everybody has rights, everybody has responsibilities, everybody knows the purpose of the drill, why we're here. We're here to make sure that we're securing this place. We want it to be like heaven. We want to make America paradise. We want to make a place that is, the light unto the nations, the beautiful model that everybody would want to be like us, and everybody would want to come here, because it is a place that is worth defending. It is a place worth living in and aspiring to be like, and involve with, and to cooperate with, because that's going to secure the safety and the happiness and the well-being of ourselves, other nations, and our posterity. So I believe that becoming a nation of well-faring stewards, and that we treat it like a cooperative. Everybody's bought into the system. Everybody has a stake in the game. Everybody has skin in the game. Everybody has a seat at the table. It's going to be the best way to approach this. And then we can bring people from all sides. It's like, you don't have the capacity to cause harm, but you certainly can help. What are you going to bring to the table? And that's what we should be about. So with that, I'm grateful for your valuable time and attention, and I hope, since you've taken into everything I've said into consideration, that you would be interested in learning more of how we might be able to accomplish this together, because I know I can't, but we can make this a reality and make this an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world that we live in, a place that is actually worth, involving with. Something we can stake a claim on, a situation that we can thrive on. That's what we deserve, and that's what I want. And I hope it's what you want too. I appreciate you. Be well.